Hello, it is Saturday the 4th of May and we're going to take a look at Bitcoin and some crypto, and everybody's asking, is the bottom in from this correction in Bitcoin and are we on our way up again? It's been a week of pretty bad news for crypto. We saw CZ from Binance jailed for 4 months. We saw Roger Ver detained in Spain and looking to be extradited for tax. And the most worrying things for me, I think, were the SEC Wells notices issued to Uniswap and to Consensus, which is the blockchain and Web3 company behind the MetaMask wallet. So the US government is still cracking down on crypto, and that, to be honest, is a little bit concerning to me. However, in Bitcoin, there was some good fundamental news, apart from, now that we've got the halving out of the way, and that is to do with liquidity. If you consider that most of the Bitcoin previous runs have been to do with huge excess dollar liquidity in the system, and that's a lot to do with stock market rallies as well, then what happened with the Fed this week was pretty positive. They announced a tapering of their quantitative tightening. So they reduced the rate of quantitative tightening from 95 billion to 60 billion per month, which is basically 35 billion per month of extra dollar liquidity. So we saw dollar weakness on that, and that potentially, it might take a bit of time, but that, to be honest, is good news for risk assets. And that's good news for risk assets without the Fed having to cut rates. So let's take a look at what is going on in Bitcoin, because here's this amazing rally that we've had. If we take a look at, first off, at the futures and where we closed on Friday night, it was a little bit of a bearish level. We were still underneath the daily 20 moving average, which basically for the most of April, once we got underneath, there has been resistance. It was support when we were above it, and now it's resistance. So we really need a close back above these daily moving averages, above this daily 20 and this 50, which is sideways at these highs, to be saying that we're on our way back to the top of the channel. If we take a look at where we're trading in the spot, in the last hour, we've popped above. In the last hour, we've had a nice pop, and we've popped above this daily 20 moving average, and we are back at these previous highs. Now, it's easy to get excited and say, oh, that's it, the bottom, but until we really reverse this trend, we're not sure. And now, if I take a look at how this correction unfolds, as you know, I'm a big fan of zigzags. I'm a zigzag girl. In Elliott Wave, they have two kinds of corrections. So they have ABCs and XYZs. And so the difference between them is in an ABC, let me draw this. In an ABC, you'll have 5 waves down, 3 waves up, 5 waves down to finish. I kind of thought that's what we may be doing here, but it may not. It may be that we are in, a simple 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, in which case, yeah, very good argument that we're done here. However, sometimes in a flat correction, which is like a sideways correction, it will be it will look like this, and then the final leg will be 3 waves. Sorry, in a flat correction, it's more of a double top, isn't it? Okay, like this, and there'll be 5 waves. And so when this decision, around here is this kind of decision point, because we still could do one more swing lower. It's not over until we get above these moving averages. So we could still do one more 5th wave. Now, 5th waves are often truncated, but there is a possibility, therefore, that until we kind of get out of this chop zone in the middle of this correction, that we could see one more swing lower. And as I said before, I really thought 55,000 would be quite an important level for that. Let me put in Y. Actually, no, not that one. Let's go out to the weekly, and then I'll talk about Y. If we think this is a wave 1, then we are underneath the 236 fib from this low to high, although we're fighting hard to recover it here with this daily candle, aren't we? And if we go a little bit lower, 55,000 is where I think the kind of ideal retrace of this whole swing from last June is. Now, the other thing in crypto is that very often, you know, if you're the first one in, you often get shaken out with a nasty retest. However, if we are going to keep going higher here, if we look at, you know, I'm always a big fan of looking at lower time frame moving averages for support and resistance that will tell us where we're likely to pull back to. So if we look at this on a 4-hour, we could say, well, we've regained our 4-hour moving averages. If we have a shallow pullback here, maybe back to these swing lows, we could see a little bit of a lower, excuse me, a lower time frame inverted head and shoulders pattern here. Something like that. That would be a good look on any time frame. If you saw that, that's always quite a good look, especially if you break the highs. So yes, and I would say a really clear, like if you really want to be sure, wait for this to get above the daily 50 moving average and then buy the next 3-wave pullback, okay? Which we will get. It will not go up and take off in a straight line. I feel like we're in a little bit of a similar scenario if we go back in time to the correction that we had at the end of January in Bitcoin. When we got underneath all of these moving averages, you can see first time back to the 20 moving average, it was a little bit of trouble. Then we pushed up to the 50, then we got above it, and then we had a very nice 3-wave correction that held the moving averages and we took off. And I think that's probably likely what we are going to see next with Bitcoin. So no reason to FOMO. Don't buy the highs on a weekend in thin liquidity. Really wait until next week. Remember, we have got the Hong Kong ETF launch. And I have to say, you know, we can talk about liquidity and halvings and everything else, but price drives the bus in Bitcoin. And there is no greater fundamental than the price going up to make people want to get in. So short term, I think we are in a little bit of a bumpy phase here, but I would really like to see a nice little, even on a lower time frame, 3-wave pullback, like an hourly. And at this point, if you didn't buy any at 60,000 or 56,000, or you're not one of those Twitter legends that managed to catch the low, there's always lots of them, then just be careful. And if we are going to see this correction, so we've had one swing, whether it's an A or an X, and a second swing, and then we're in this third swing, what would definitely confirm it, I would say, is, you know, sometimes they underfurl as like declining wedges. So they might be a parallel channel, or they might be a little bit like this. You know, we could say that this, for example, if we draw it this way, we could say, oh, here we are, look, breaking out. But very often with trend lines and horizontal levels in any market, the third touch is very often a false breakout. So we need to be careful that this is not a false breakout here and closing back underneath this daily 20 moving average, not being able to keep going. If you hold above, you know, if you get above these daily moving averages, you really want to see them become support, as we did here. And so watch out for a false breakout here in Bitcoin. Okay, let's take a look at some ETH, because ETH, really a high tide floats all the boats, and that's exactly what we're seeing here in ETH, particularly in this channel. I think we've had a 3-wave correction, we've got a higher low, but again, this daily 20 moving average in ETH has always been a little bit tricky first time back to it, like from example from the low that we made in March. First time back, deep correction, and then it was very tricky first time back here, deep correction, and here we are back at this 20 moving average again. If we're going to see another swing lower, in fact, if there was, we're going to say, well, for this swing, you know, we could see a little bit of pullback here. At this point, I would like to see if we can get over the line and then back to the top, potentially, of this channel in ETH. So they are all doing the same thing. Just watch out for a bigger pullback. And, you know, as you know, I like Heikanashi, and I like to see some red before I buy. I don't like to buy spikes. Let's take a look at Solana. So I looked at Solana Bitcoin, which I thought looked pretty bullish the other day. the reason I like it so much. I think if we look at our weekly and how we are holding these weekly moving averages, we're looking pretty good. Somebody said, would I look at Sol ETH? And that's a very good idea, because which one is going to outperform? So I'm going to look at a few of these this way. Now, naked eye, when I look at this, I'm a little bit concerned that Solana, sideways in ETH against these previous highs, it's a little bit of a tricky level. First off, not only is this previous highs where you often see liquidations or people taking profit. So previous highs and lows are always a little bit of trouble areas, and it looks a little bit like a swing failure double top. It's bullish because we're holding the weekly 20 moving average, but after potentially what we've seen here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we could be in line for a bigger pullback back to the bottom of this wave 4, which would mean back to 0.033. The alternative is here that that's not what we've seen. This is wave 1, 2, 3. This is wave 4, and what we've just seen is wave 1 of 5, and we're about to see a much bigger swing. And I would say that as long as we hold this weekly 20 moving average, we're still going up. You can't argue with that, and it's pretty bullish. And on a lower time frame, looks very bottomy, doesn't it? Our moving averages are flattening out. So at the moment, yes, Sol over ETH, but we're in a very tricky area where we could see a bigger reversal. So that weekly 20 moving average, if we put our fibs on from high to low, we dropped under 236 fib. We look like we're going to recover it again. If we don't, I have to say, watch out for a bigger 50% retrace. In other words, if we fail here and turn lower again, 0.0329, or basically 0.033, which would be 50% retrace of the low in Sol ETH, would be where we're going. At the moment, we're in this choppy sideways consolidation. April's been very tricky for this, and if we look at this on the daily, this is very much like Bitcoin. We are for sure going up if we take out the high from the 23rd of April and we take out the daily 50. At the moment, you could say that Solana and ETH are kind of performing equally. Certainly Solana versus ETH above 0.05 will retest the highs at 0.059 and could be beginning a really powerful next leg higher if we make new highs in this one. Okay, request for Avalanche. Avalanche is one that I traded quite a lot, and this is another one where you kind of want to, it's very easy to say against the dollar, which Avalanche is going up, which any chart we can see we've had a pretty nasty pullback. But if we say 5 waves up and we pull back to these previous swing lows, potentially Avalanche against the dollar will be going up again if we break this little sideways consolidation and recover this weekly 20 moving average. If we don't, we are likely to fall further, and the correction isn't over. If we look at this on the daily, this is a really cool place for Avalanche to bounce. We're sideways at this daily 200 moving average. This is the king of the chart basically, and we've got this little sideways range going on. And if we break out of it, you know, you have to say that we're on our kind of way higher again. I'm not drawing this very well. So watch out. So whenever I'm watching this, what I never want to see is a kind of really solid equal measured move like this. So if all we did was get up to 41 in an equal measured move, I would say, yeah, likely to pull back quite hard and not the bullish recovery that I'm looking for. If I measure this from high to low, fibs aren't really helping me at the moment. So Avalanche US dollar, it's going to be like everything else. It looks like it's making a really good bottom, but it hasn't quite proven that it is. Now, if you came into crypto from, say, forex trading, you'll know that you always want to pick the fastest horse in the race, and that's the whole point of what currency trading is. You're trading the one that's outperforming the other, so you always do look at it against other charts. So would you want to be in Avalanche over ETH? You take a look at the Avalanche ETH chart if there is one. Luckily there is, thank you Binance. And if we take a look at where we are, potentially we've made a very nice three-wave correction here. But if I measure it, you know, there's lots to like about this pattern, because from the all-time highs here to the lows, we have retraced 50% and then pull back 50%, and we could very easily do another swing higher, but I think we've gone, look, 50% up, 50% back, 50% up, and here we are retesting the lows. So I'm not quite so bullish on that fib pattern thing, but if I look at where we are with these moving averages, we're kind of in no man's land, in a little bit of a tricky sideways zone in between flat weekly moving averages, which means no trend, which means against ETH, Avalanche isn't really underperforming, it's just sideways. So they're not much difference. There isn't really an ideal trade. If I look at the daily moving averages, I have to say I stay a little bearish looking at this. And you know the rules when I look at equal measure moves. So I measure the first swing, high to low, project it from the bounce leg, and the 61.8 is my first level to look for support and correction to be over. And if we get underneath it and stay underneath it, it becomes resistance. The equal measured move is next. So I think looking at this, unless we can recover 1155, we are likely to continue lower in this to 720. Now, key support, it's a sideways range, so key support is this weekly 50 moving average in this low. And so underneath 0.01, we're going to go to 0.0072. That's how I look at it. And it's a choppy sideways range in between. And for me, no, I wouldn't be jumping in to buy Avalanche over ETH at the moment. What about Avalanche over Solana? You can always look, search and see if there's a chart for that. BitTrue has a chart for that. Here we are. Let's zoom out and look at this weekly chart. It's not got that much history, but what we can see with Avalanche against Solana is we get periods of strong trends and then sideways ranges. So what I mean by sideways range, so these support and resistance levels are pretty key, aren't they? You can see here in the middle. So these highs here became support, up here, these lows here became resistance, and so on. So here we've got double top, and here hoping, we're looking to see if this will hold as a double bottom. So at the moment, whilst we go sideways at these previous lows, it doesn't look like, certainly doesn't look like Avalanche is outperforming. So we need to launch off these lows. If I look at it on a daily chart for Avalanche to be outperforming Solana, at the moment it's not. Could it? It's a really good place to do it. It's just we haven't got the price action to show that that's happening at the moment. So yeah, they're going sideways. Let's take a look at a few more charts that are interesting. One of them for me is FTM. Phantom. Why do I like this chart? Well, first off, I like this because if I look back at the lows from October 2023, I kind of think that we did a really nice extended rally for what's the third wave. We haven't dropped underneath this first wave, and we've done a textbook three-wave equal measured move correction on and holding the weekly 20 moving average. We're also holding a pretty interesting support level. If we go down to the daily, you can see this is the look. So from this high to this low, if I measure it and then project it from here, this was equal at 0.58. And the rule for me is if you bounce from an equal measured move level like this, then back above the 61.8 is pretty bullish. So I'm going to be pretty bullish for more upside in FTM against the dollar above 0.763. So that's a chart I'm watching. Pretty nice bounce at the moment, higher low. It looks like a smaller three-wave correction here if I look at it on a 4 hour. And so yeah, potentially a pretty interesting bottom in FTM, confirmed above 0.76. And then that should see more upside. And if we go back out to the daily and we look at it from the lows of last October in FTM, we can say that this would be a fifth wave. So we can say that it should have a relationship to this first wave. So 1.618 would be a retest. So we'll go level to level to level, right? Above 0.79, we're looking for 0.94. That's where it will be equal and so on. So FTM, unless we kind of get above that level, I'm not, or at least back above the daily 20 moving average and holding it, I'm not going to be that excited. But it is one that's making a pattern that I like to see, so I'm watching it. I went through all of the gaming coins that I'm following, and I really can't see anything that's making an interesting bottom quite yet. So I think we're in one of those situations, you know, where the bigger you know, if Bitcoin can bottom and make a high and continue higher, then the first ones that are going to follow are the larger, bigger cap, you know, blue chip crypto altcoins, if you like. So I'm looking at a few of them, but I couldn't see anything in the gaming coins. FTM I like the pattern on, but there are a few. So let's see what we think maybe happens in the, because what we've seen is a really interesting bounce here in Dogecoin. And on the weekly, Dogecoin, let's screen out, tidy up. If I put my fib retraces from the high to the low, we got rejected at the 236 fib, which is a very common thing to happen first time you try it. And when you look on a lower time frame, there were a lot of people going, oh, Tesla and Doge are going to hell. And this is a head and shoulders pattern, and head and shoulders pattern fail usually when they're ABC patterns. And I think, you know, we could still make a bigger head and shoulders pattern here, but today we have moved above the daily 20 moving average, and that was resistance when we tried to do this on 20th, 23rd of April. So we should go back to the top of this sideways range, which will bring us back to the daily 50 moving average, and above that we're on our way up. We could, there's another, if you don't like moving averages or you don't use them, I need to make this level. Another way to look at this would be fib level to fib level. So I put my fib retraces on, we got above the 236 fib. Next resistance will be at 1615 as long as we don't 0.14 and then 50% and then so on. So potentially Dogecoin, if we can make a nice bottom in Bitcoin, I think it looks pretty well set to rally from here. There are a few other charts that I think look pretty interesting. Let's take a look at RUNE, for example. Now, big picture in RUNE, we had a big choppy correction from the highs in May 2021. We made a very nice long-term bottom, and here's our big rally. And this is another one that has pulled back to a really interesting level where you could say it's pulled back to these previous swing lows, and it's also pulled back to a 61.8 fib retrace for me. So that makes it really simple with fib patterns. If we bounce from here, and everything will, and we get above this 50% level in the middle, we will go at least back to this 38.2 fib back test it. So when you, between the 61.8 and 38.2 zone is kind of golden ratio zone. Now, could we make a bigger head and shoulders here if we did that? Yeah, we probably could. But what tends to happen with these patterns is you go between them. So if we bounce from the 61.8 and we get above the 50%, we'll get up to the 38.2. Then we'd be looking for this 50% to be support if we're going to keep going higher. We may also get up here and then get back underneath it. You know, you can go sideways for a while in this 61.8, 38.2 zone, but it gives us really good levels to say, yeah, we are very likely to see more upside. And we can see not just fib retraces, but these are also pretty important support and resistance levels. So above 6.11, we should see 7.3. Above 7.3, a really good chance that there's a bottom in this RUNE and everything will go up together. Good luck. If there's anything you'd like me to look at you think looks interesting, I was going to do a whole thing about friend tech, but yeah, what a disaster. Let's talk about that later, another time. If there's anything you'd like me to look